This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
Good evening, boys and girls, or rather good morrow or good morning, boys and girls, scholars and laymen. I'm your host for the empowerment segment, Brother Ron, also known as R2C2H2 the Artivist. And this is another wonderful edition of the Artivist Thanks. And I come to you today on the morning of the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump. Been a lot of things going on in the media right now, a lot of things on my mind as well. But I just want to share with you all something. I did not do a broadcast or a podcast or a video cast, whatever, on MLK Day 2017. But I thought it was necessary to do something to honor MLK and his legacy, and to also provide you all with some things you might not know about MLK. Now, I've been seeing a lot of people videos and commentary about MLK, interesting, creative stuff. But also I want to give you some things you may not really know, like factual stuff in terms of his life story, some chapters that they don't want to talk about, as well as what we can do now to honor that spirit, the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time. So I call it the Trump Geist for Donald Trump. This is the era. And I believe that 2017 is the year of the risk taker. So take advantage. 2017 is the year of the risk taker. So take advantage. Because the thing about it is, if you want to do whatever you want to do, you always thought about doing it, now's the time. Because the end is near. I'm just joking. I don't really know when the end is coming, but people seeing two suns in the sky. People talking about 2020. People talking about 2022. People talking we got about 8 more years. I ain't talking about Donald Trump. But all I'm just saying is things are happening. Times are wasting. You better do something that you want to do. Because especially if you are black people, your creativity and your imagination can not only save you, but also empower you. Don't rely on what they say. Develop the energy, the inner God. But anyway, let's get to Dr. Martin Luther King. First and foremost, Martin Luther King Jr. name is not Martin, it's Michael. It's never been changed legally. His father was named Michael King Sr. His son was named Michael King Jr. And his family members, like his surviving sister, Christine, they called him Michael. But he is known to the world as Martin Luther King Jr. But there was never change. Allegedly, his father went over to Germany, was inspired by the first Protestant Martin Luther. And he was so inspired that he decided to change his name and his son's name. But Michael King Jr. is the man that we celebrate today. But also with Michael King Jr., here's a couple of things. He was in love with a white girl. Martin Luther King Jr. met this German cafeteria worker while he was going to Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. Now, the only reason he married this white girl is interest, because a lot of his peers talked him out of it, because his daddy would not only disapprove of him marrying a white woman, but also he would have disapproved of him marrying a person below his station. You see, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was upper middle class. He was black rich, okay? He didn't come from the ghetto. He came from a very prominent and prosperous family in the Atlanta black community, very well known and revered in that region. So he was an upper middle class. So basically he would have been marrying poor white trash if he had married Betty, even though that was at the time, I guess, the love of his life. And also, imagine him bring her back home to the South and also trying to do a ministry. Interracial dating was still taboo. Swirling was still taboo in the middle of the 20th century, okay? It was still taboo. Matter of fact, I almost cost Billy Eckstine his whole career just for taking a picture with a white woman holding on to him. But that's another story altogether for another day. But yes, Dr. King was in love with a white woman named Betty, the cafeteria worker at the school he was attending, Crozer Theological Seminary. And also, Daddy King was not too fond of Coretta Scott King as well. He didn't care for Coretta Scott King. I mean, we look at Coretta Scott King now. She's an icon. She was gorgeous, intelligent, sophisticated, very supportive of her husband's dream, was really the standard bearer for that legacy. But Daddy King didn't care for Coretta either. Matter of fact, he wanted Dr. King to marry this opera singer from Atlanta named Mattie Wilder Dobbs. Mattie Wilder Dobbs, she was a black opera singer, a trailblazer in her own right. Look her up, Mattie Wilder Dobbs. Her daddy was John Dobbs, the founder of the Atlanta Civic League and also the Atlanta Negro Voters League. And he was very close to Daddy King, very close to Daddy King. That family, the Dobbs and the Kings, were very tight. And matter of fact, Dr. King spoke at her father's funeral back in 1961. But Mattie Wilder Dobbs was also the aunt of the one and only the Honorable Maynard Jackson, the first black mayor of Atlanta. You see how that works, boys and girls, scholars and laymen? That's a powerful tribe. So his auntie almost married Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Matter of fact, Maynard Jackson attended the funeral procession and the funeral of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he was inspired at their funeral to file for a chance to run for Georgia State Senate. And the rest is history. Although he lost that election by 6,000 votes in a couple months or several months, he was the deputy mayor of Atlanta. And the rest, they say, is history. So I just told y'all some interesting things y'all might not be aware of, but take a look. It's all online. Those couple of tidbits right there. Very important stuff. And also, December 9th, 1999, U.S. court in Memphis, Tennessee found that the government was guilty in the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Once again, December 9th, 1999, in a U.S. court in Memphis, Tennessee, the United States government, or parts, certain parts of the United States government, was found guilty of murdering Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What happened with that was that the King family, led by Sister Coretta Scott King, Martin's widow, they had filed a lawsuit against this businessman named Lloyd Jowers, this Memphis businessman and restaurant owner. He owned a restaurant right by the Lorraine Motel. He was a contact person for the New Orleans Mafia. And he allegedly was the one who was controlling the contract to have the hit done on Martin Luther King Jr. So they sued him for $1 because all they wanted, they ain't care for no money. They wanted just the truth to come out and to be documented for posterity. So they got that. You can find the transcripts online. I believe King Center got a link to the transcripts. You are able to find them online. But I would suggest to you that you download it and keep it for your records. Because I remember just several years ago when they were in the process of building the MLK Memorial in D.C., it was hard to find those transcripts. Then after the memorial was completed, the transcripts were made available once again. So also a good book to read is The Plot to Kill King by Dr. William Pepper. Dr. William Pepper is a lawyer and a social justice advocate. He was a good friend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the King family. And also, at the end, he was James Earl Ray's lawyer. Now, James Earl Ray never had a trial. He pleaded guilty to the killing of Dr. King, but he said he was misled and he wanted to clear his name. So James Earl Ray was represented by Dr. William Pepper. He wrote a couple of books. Another book is An Act of State, which deals with the MLK killing. But his recent book, The Plot to Kill King, goes into more details and never before heard things, such as Dr. King survived the shot on the balcony. He actually survived that balcony shot, and he was killed at the hospital. Once again, in the book and in other sources, is alleging that Dr. King survived the balcony assassination attempt, and that he was actually killed by doctors at St. Joseph's Hospital in Memphis. Like, he was brought to the hospital, he still was alive, but the doctors called everybody out the room. The chief surgeon, allegedly, him and two other men spit on Dr. King and put a pillow over his face and suffocated him to death. So you look at all this online, this is new information, and they're talking about certain people being involved, old and new characters. The book alleges that the assassination of Dr. King was a team work or a team collaboration with the military intelligence, with the FBI, with the Memphis Police Department, with the Mafia, the Italian Mafia, New Orleans Mafia, and the Dixie Mafia. So once again, the book alleges that it was a group project featuring the FBI, military intelligence, Mafia, Dixie Mafia, and Memphis Police Department. It's alleged that the shooter was actually MPD, was Memphis police officer. He shot Dr. King from the bushes, which were cut down the following morning. They cut down the bushes the following morning because people said they saw smoke coming from the bushes, and people claim they saw a man dressed in police uniform jump out those bushes into a patrol car. And that the alleged shooter, is still around. He actually confessed to Dr. William Pepper, and you'll see that confession in his recent book, The Plot to Kill King. And on the cover, you see Dr. King, I believe, with Jesse and some other folks, but Jesse Jackson was not on the balcony when Dr. King was shot. As a matter of fact, he was in the patio section of the Lorraine Motel. Speaking of Dr. King, he wore a turtleneck, but the next day people saw him on news in Chicago with blood on his shirt. What he actually did was, after Dr. King got shot, he went up the stairs and put blood on his shirt. And it was interesting that, Memphis was under martial law. Like everybody else, it's like erupted in riots around the country when Dr. King got shot, when they heard the news. Memphis was under martial law. The airplanes were down, but airplane carrying Jesse Jackson from Memphis to Chicago was allowed to go that night, which is interesting. I don't know what to say about that, but you make your own conclusions and do your research. But he was allowed to leave the city of Memphis while it was under martial law. So that's something to think about as we get along. But also, Dr. King would normally have security detail courtesy of the Memphis Police Department. He would normally would have had a all-black security detail from the Memphis Police Department. But the last times he came to Memphis, he did not have police protection. Once again, I had spoke to folks who were responsible for organizing his Memphis police detail. But the last couple of times he came to Memphis, he did not have police protection. As a matter of fact, on the day when he was assassinated, there were no police nearby. But after he got shot, there were police, and the crime scene was contaminated. Because as soon as he got shot and he left the scene, they started cleaning up the crime scene, which is interesting. If you go back to what happened to Kennedy, soon they put him in Parkland Hospital. I believe it's called Parkland. They sent the limousine he was driving in back to his manufacturer in Cincinnati, and they scrubbed it up. They cleaned it. And it was a crime scene. Why would you contaminate the crime scene like that? Same thing with Malcolm X. As soon as he was shot and they rushed him to the hospital, he dead, they cleaned up the crime scene so a black church could have a dance party that night. Let me repeat that once again. The crime scene where Malcolm X was assassinated at was cleaned up, and then a few hours later, a black church had a dance party in the same place where they killed our brother Malcolm. Every time there's an inside job, it seems, the crime scene is contaminated. Once again, every time there's an inside job. Most times it is an inside job. All the time it's an inside job. I don't know. Think the crime scene is always contaminated. Dr. King, soon he left the scene, they start scrubbing up the blood from the balcony. They cut down the bushes early next morning. The sanitation department, I believe, or either somebody, fire department, cut down those bushes where people say they saw a person firing from those bushes. Matter of fact, It was a black New York Times reporter who is still around. I believe he's a professor at Hampton University if he's not retired. His name is I think it's Ron Caldwell. Either Earl Caldwell or Ron Caldwell. He was there covering Dr. King's movements in Memphis for the New York Times. Reverend James Orange, a lieutenant and trusted confidant of Dr. King in the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He also saw a smoke coming from the bushes. Just hours before, you had the Memphis Invaders, Memphis version of the Black Panther Party at the Lorraine Motel, but they were forced to check out by a member of Dr. King's staff, which is interesting. They were forced to check out by a member of Dr. King's staff. Had they been on the scene, they was armed, and they probably could have possibly shot at the person or people who was shooting at Dr. King. Now, from my understanding, military intelligence had people at the fire station. The black firefighters who were told to leave the station and go home. It was Officer Ed Redditt, a black Memphis police officer. He was scoping out the scene, and he was told to leave. They said there was a hit on his life. He was told by his commanding officer that there was a hit on his life. So he had to leave, and I interviewed him before he passed away several years ago. It's available on our YouTube channel, Officer Ed Redditt, and his perspective on what happened. His mother-in-law actually had a heart attack when she heard the news of Dr. King getting killed. But there's so much I'm trying to say in just a short period of time. But what happened with that is the reason why he probably didn't have police protection was the fact that there was a new person in town that controlled both the fire department and the Memphis Police Department. His name was Frank Holloman. And for 25 plus years, he was the number 3 man for J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. Once again, the person who controlled the Memphis fire and police departments was Frank Holloman, who was J. Edgar Hoover's, the director of the FBI, number 3 man for 25 years. And we all know from documents and whatnot and testimony that the FBI director Hoover had no love. Or maybe he had some love. That's another story. For Dr. King, he had a hatred. He had an obsession with Dr. King. He even suggested to Dr. King that he killed himself to save himself and his reputation. But anyway, yeah, so think about that, folks. And one of the reasons that people put forth that they wanted to kill Dr. King in Memphis is to prevent him from going on to Washington, D.C. for his Poor People campaign. Now, the fear in that, why would they want to do that? Because he was there 5 years before, he did a speech, but this time he came with demands. And like Brother Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. And Dr. King was bringing the disenfranchised, the neglected, the maladjusted. He said it himself that it's going to take the creatively maladjusted folk to save humanity. So he's bringing all those people to D.C., but at this time, we were deep in the Vietnam War, a war we couldn't win. No matter how many battles we won, we couldn't win that war. So the government was overextended. So he wanted to bring these people to D.C. to demand that the government redistribute the wealth. You know, similar to what the bonus army of the 1930s did. You know, these World War I veterans who demanded that the government pay them and to redistribute the wealth. Dr. King was taking on that same type of legacy when he wanted the government to redistribute the wealth and for everybody in America to be able to have a living wage. Not minimum wage, but a living wage. A certain quality of life. And the powers that be was afraid because although Dr. King was a man of peace, the people he would bring to the D.C. were going to be in the thousands. And really could not control them. You know, he couldn't control them. And also the government was overextended in Vietnam. And, you know, they was afraid that it was going to cause a revolution. You bring all these folks that are sick and tired of being sick and tired. To quote the immortal Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. To D.C. to shut down the whole thing, they would have clogged up the system. Now, you think about this. You know, Minister Farrakhan respected him in the Nation of Islam. I attended the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. It was held on a Saturday. It was organized, it was peaceful. You know, there was no disruption. Dr. King was going to bring a force that was going to disrupt business as usual in D.C. They basically could have shut down the government. And that's what the powers that be were afraid of. See, Dr. King was okay when you're trying to sit on a bus and try to sit in a restaurant. But even he came to the conclusion in his last speech or so, what good is it for me to sit in a restaurant when I can afford a hamburger to eat? What good is it for me to sit in a restaurant if I could not afford a hamburger to eat? Now that last speech is interesting in Memphis at Mason Temple on April 3rd, 1968. They call it the mountaintop speech, but really it's about the Black Power economic speech. That's what I call it. Because in that speech, he told folks to boycott the people that won't employ you. They'll take your money but won't give you a job to make money. He told people in that speech to boycott places like Hart's Bread, Wonder Bread, and Coca-Cola. He told black folks in this speech to invest and go join a black bank, get a black insurance company, support black-owned businesses. See, Dr. King was starting to come around, because I remember reading a story that talked about how successful the Montgomery bus boycott was, that the city was looking to sell the bus company, and that black businessman like A.G. Gaston, who was the wealthiest black man in Alabama, who was a big supporter of the movement, he would bail people out. A lot of the movement leaders like Dr. King would stay at his hotel in Birmingham. And also S.B. Fuller, a person we forgotten about, who was arguably the wealthiest black person in America. They approached Dr. King with the idea of buying that bus line. And Dr. King was wary, he was hesitant, because Dr. King is not a businessman. He was a leader, a spiritual leader, an activist. He was not a businessman. So he was kind of hesitant. He said, well, we got what we wanted. Why do we want to do that? Because his thing was about integration, right? But then he realized towards the end that I'm integrating to a burning house, that our people are losing our moral compass, that we're losing our damn mind. And yeah, he said we should stay as firemen, but still we should have got the damn house. Because when we think of integration, we're thinking of assimilation. See, the idea is not to lose your identity in integration. The idea is to be treated as an equal and keep your identity intact. But black folks, we as black people confuse integration and assimilation. We could never assimilate. They won't allow us. This is a system of racism, white supremacy. Somebody got to be the outsider and always be the one to blame for everything. And that falls on black people. Hence the name black people. That's another story. And I know y'all gonna have a field day with that, but this is too much stuff I'm trying to cover in a short period of time. We'll talk about that later, family. But so they had to get him in Memphis. And they tried on March 28th. Normally Dr. King, when he came to Memphis, he would stay at the Holiday Inn down on Riverside, the Holiday Inn, which was a white-owned hotel chain, which was started in Memphis by Kemmons Wilson, I believe his name was. So Dr. King took the task in the white media. Why would you be a black leader and stay at white-owned hotels? Are you ashamed of your people, Dr. King? And this was actually a propaganda thing led by people like FBI and probably the CIA. CIA has been known to control and manipulate media to this day. We can look at examples right now. But the FBI, I think, led a smear campaign against Dr. King and chastised him through the media for staying at a white-owned hotel. That's when he decided to stay at the Lorraine Motel, of all places. So not only that, but a member of his staff moved his room from a secluded area at the hotel. Because Walter Bailey, the owner of the hotel, at first put Dr. King in a room that was secluded, that was a little bit more protected than the balcony hotel room. But somebody from his staff moved Dr. King from that room to the hotel balcony room. Now, the person that was responsible for Dr. King's, I guess, itinerary was a guy named, I want to say, Jimmy Harrison. He was the SCLC secretary for Dr. King. Now we know he was the FBI. He was the FBI informant, mole, whatever, that was placed in the SCLC, and he was over control of Dr. King's schedule. That's a lot of power for a person to have, to be control somebody's schedule, to be able to influence where he would be, where he would stay, and stuff like that. So just like with the Nation of Islam, the National Secretary for Elijah Muhammad John Ali was an FBI mole informant that was responsible for communication between Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X. So I'm just telling y'all this because repetition is learning. And a lot of times it's about our people, man. You got to be a patient person when you deal with our people because the information is out there. You know, just don't take my word for it. Okay, the information is out there. And it's, you know, people talking about, well, why Dick Gregory always repeat himself? Because have y'all got the message yet? Because I don't think a lot of us get the message. We hear the message, but are we listening to understand? And are we critically thinking and assessing the information? That's important. And that will make the internet so powerful. The ability to get your prayers answered in a nanosecond, to get this information at your fingertips. Because knowledge is power if you know how to apply it. Knowledge is the currency of the universe, boys and girls, scholars and laymen. Okay? So that's very important to get out the way. So there's so much things to talk about, but keep in mind that the transcripts for the trial for Dr. King murder is available. You know, the one that they found out that on December 9th, 1999, that the government was complicit in the killing of Dr. King. You understand? That's very important to look up. People talk about Dr. King's legacy, but if you get all your information from your enemy, how can you really know it's true? Now, there's truth in a lie. There's fact in a myth. But if your whole narrative comes from what your enemy thinks of you and what your enemy allows you to know, then you are in bad shape. And I'm talking to us as black people. Like what Brother Malcolm said, only a fool will let his enemy be the primary educator of his children. Only a fool will let his enemy be the primary educator of his children. You know what's said about America is that even with Dr. King, they can't stand to give a black person, especially a black man, their props and respect. You understand? Because even on Dr. King Day, that's a federal holiday. It's like what Dick Gregory said. You say you don't celebrate Christmas, but the banks are closed on Christmas, so you celebrate Christmas. You say you don't celebrate Dr. King Day, but the banks are closed on Dr. King Day, so you celebrate Dr. King Day. But yet white folks can't get themselves around that. They want to celebrate Confederate Day, Robert E. Lee Day, Stonewall Jackson Day, any day but Dr. King Day. And I'm here to say I don't need white folks' validation to know that I'm great. You understand? We don't need white folks to acknowledge Dr. King. He was our hero. He fought for black folks first, the black family first. He understood the Holy Trinity, the black man, woman, and child. That was on display during the Montgomery bus boycott. So we got to get in this mindset. I'm not worried about what white folks do. We got to start getting some black business. Stay out of white folks' business. Mind your black business. Create some black businesses, right? So this is important. What Dr. King was talking about in his last speech, creating black businesses, invested in self, do for self. People forget he met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1966 when he was leaving the Chicago housing movement. He met with Elijah Muhammad, so they had to rub out for him. One Georgia boy from another Georgia boy. Georgia's a very powerful state, produced some very powerful prophetic black man. Not only Dr. King, not only Elijah Muhammad, but Bishop Henry McNeil Turner. Look up Bishop Henry McNeil Turner. He said that God was black. He knew this back in the 19th century. I think he was the first black army chaplain. Him or Martin Delaney, one of them guys, but powerful brother. He's some Georgia brothers. Malcolm Daddy was a Georgia man. Something about the state of Georgia produced these powerful prophetic black men. So, yeah, that's important to note. And also in the, Billy Cowles, the Reverend Billy Cowles, the King assassination, they said some people claim he was a Memphis Police Department informant. They claimed he was an MPD informant, and Billy Cowles passed away last year in May, and they did this thing called Room 306. I think I talked about it earlier, where he claimed he spent the last hour with Dr. King. The last hour of Dr. King's life he spent with him in Dr. King's hotel room 306, along with Reverend Ralph Abernathy. But if you read Reverend Ralph Abernathy's autobiography, that's not true. As a matter of fact, from my understanding, there was a SCLC meeting the last hour of Dr. King's life. And all Billy Cowles did was come up to that, to the room and knock on the door and let them know that, hey, we got to get to going. But Bill Kyle's another interesting character that people go, the truth is always going to come out, okay? The truth about these characters, everything, what's been hiding or been hidden, this is the age of Aquarius, excuse me. This is the age of transparency, period. So whatever is done in the dark will be brought to the light. It is what it is. So, false idols, false prophets will be exposed. And I don't know. Billy Cows was also cross-examined in the 99 trial. And he was caught, he was basically exposed, at the trial. You can get the transcript somewhere online. I think the King Center got a link to the transcript. But like I said, save you a copy to your hard drive, because it might disappear again. Oh man. So, yep, that's the way it is. The King family went to a lot of tragedy and hardship. There's a lot of things we don't talk about when we talk about the legacy of Dr. King, the hardships that the King family went through. For example, the King family was spied upon for 3 generations by the U.S. government, starting with Dr. King's maternal grandfather, who oversaw Ebenezer Church down in Atlanta, the King stronghold. Let me repeat that once more. The King family was spied upon for 3 generations by the U.S. government. U.S. government knew who the King family was even before Martin was born. And I talk about the family tragedies. For example, the year after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, his brother was found dead floating in his swimming pool on July 21st, 1969. Once again, July 21st, 1969, Dr. King's brother, A.D. King, Reverend A.D. King, was found floating in his swimming pool, cause of death unknown. And he could swim. So you fast forward to 1974, June 30th, 1974, Mama King, Dr. King's mom, was assassinated at her organ at Ebenezer Church along with her fellow deacon. She was assassinated by a 23-year-old black man from Ohio named Marcus Wayne Chenault, who ended up dying in prison August 19th, 1995, after suffering, I think, either a stroke or a heart attack on August 3rd, 1995. At first, he was given the death penalty, but the King family opposed the death penalty, and they resentenced him to life in prison. Then you had the death of Reverend Daddy King Sr. He died, I believe, passed away of a heart attack November 11th, 1984, at the age of 84. So you have all these hardships in the King family that a lot of us as black people are not aware of. And this is why I'm doing this video, because a lot of this information is not getting out there, but it's available readily online. And I look at myself as, having a responsibility to my people, to feed my people with some of this information. And what you do is you got to research this information and amplify. Like my friend Judge Bailey say, amplify, amplify, amplify. It's your job, because we are in the info wars. And knowledge yourself, you want to know knowledge yourself, you got to know information and how to utilize the information to leverage yourself in a better position in this white supremacist racist world. So that's very important to know. And also Dr. King, yes, he embraced the non-violence philosophy in terms of attacking, but he got into some fist fights. Don't make no mistake about it. He got into some fist fights. Some fist fights. Like, for example, he was a part of the very powerful National Baptist Convention, which was led by a very powerful minister from Chicago, originally from Mississippi, named Joseph Jackson. Back in September of 1961, Dr. King, along with Gardner Taylor, Ralph Abernathy, and some others, challenged the leadership of the National Baptist Convention at their convention in Kansas City back in September 1961. It actually got real violent, y'all. You have black ministers getting into fist fights and everything. And then one of the ministers, Reverend A.G. Wright from Detroit, fell from the stage and fractured his skull and ended up dying a couple days later. So it got so bad, y'all. These are black ministers fighting each other. Imagine Dr. King getting in a fight with other black ministers. They fist fighting, probably putting out knives and whatnot. They had to call in the mayor of Kansas City, had to come in with police to break up the fighting. Let me repeat this. Dr. King and them was getting the fist fights at a Black Baptist preacher convention and the mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, I call it Missouri, or Missouri, I call it Missouri, along with his police force, had to come in and break up the black ministers from fighting each other. And Dr. King lost his rank in that institution, which led to the formation of with 33 ministers led by Dr. King and Gardner Taylor. Gardner Taylor just recently passed away about a year or two ago, almost 100 years old. Amazing. So they formed the Progressive National Baptist Convention in Cincinnati later, and it got a following as well too. So that's another story, because a lot of Dr. King enemies were not necessarily just white supremacists and racists, but other black ministers. You had black ministers telling Daddy King during the Montgomery bus boycott to bring your boy back to Atlanta and put him in check and keep him in Ebenezer. He's causing too much trouble. He's too much of a rebel rouser. So Daddy King went up to Montgomery to retrieve MLK. And MLK said, "I'm not going nowhere, Dad. This is my purpose. This is my calling. I'm not leaving and going anywhere. We ain't going nowhere. We ain't going nowhere. We can't be stopped, because it's MLK for life." Okay, anyway. But he didn't go, and years later, Daddy King said he was glad that his son defied him and stayed true to his calling, because he didn't understand who his son was. He got about the King family were very conservative, very Republican. A lot of black folks back in those days were Republican because it was the party of Lincoln, and Lincoln was known as the savior of black people, right? He freed the slaves. So a lot of black folks back in the day were Republican, so that was not unusual. So Dr. King really broke with tradition, but he had the help of his wife, who was a visionary, who came from an interesting family background herself. Sister beautiful Coretta Scott King. She went to Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, a very progressive, liberal college in the Midwest. And so that influenced her thinking. And so that's a part y'all don't know about Dr. King, because even his letter from a Birmingham jail, when he wrote that letter, people don't understand that letter was addressed to clergy, black and white. It wasn't addressed to the average person on the street because they got it. It was more addressed to his peers who didn't get it, or they was afraid that Dr. King was rocking the boat and causing too much trouble. That's why he had to write the letter from Birmingham jail. That's why he had to form the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, because of the way he was being treated by other ministers in his profession. Now, I heard stories where Dr. King was not even allowed to preach from pulpits in certain black churches in the South. This is serious, y'all. I heard from people in the know that when Dr. King was assassinated, you had black ministers in Chicago cheering it on. They were happy to see him assassinated. When Dr. King went to Houston, you had elements of the black church put stink bombs and ventilators in the air systems when he was trying to raise money to make sure that his event was unsuccessful. So you had these things going on with his own kind. Before he even got to the real enemy, to the root of the problem, he had to deal with his own people in the black church, other black ministers. So this is all documented fact. This is not hyperbole or over exaggeration. Dr. King really had a hard time getting along with people of his own ilk, because they was afraid, because they was envious, and because, they just, it is what it is. But this is why it's so important to utilize the social media to get that information out there so people can know all the things he went through. When Dr. King was assassinated, when they did his autopsy, they said he had the heart of a 60-something-year-old person, and he was only 39 years old. So think about 13 years living in fear of your life, having your house firebombed, your family life threatened, not knowing if you're going to live or die the next moment, getting stabbed in the chest by a crazed black woman in Harlem. Had he sneezed, the knife would have went through his heart and he would have bled to death, just had he sneezed. Thinking about those realities. A lot of things people think, well, Dr. King was nonviolent and stuff, but Dr. King felt the best when he had armed security. Dr. King felt at peace, once again, when he had armed security. The reason why they were able to get him in Memphis, because he had no armed security. When I told y'all, normally when he went to Memphis, he had an all-black police security detail. Let me get that out there, because people talking about all this other stuff. Let me tell you facts. Every time, except for the last times he went to Memphis, he had armed police security detail, black policemen that loved and respected Dr. King. All right? I talked to Medgar Evers' brother several times. And Medgar Evers said, brother Charles Evers, the great Charles Evers, who is 94 years young, he is still with us. He said, whenever Dr. King came down to Mississippi, in particular Jackson, he used to run to his house because they had all the guns and goons. Dr. King said when he stayed at Charles Evers' house, man, I feel so safe, Charles, because you got all these guns and goons here. You got all the guns and goons protecting me, making me feel so good. Yeah, Dr. King believed in protecting himself. Even when he did finish James Meredith's March Against Fear, you gotta realize James Meredith was shot by a white sniper on Highway 51 going into Mississippi from Memphis. So he couldn't finish his march, so Dr. King and Stokely Carmichael, some other people came on down, or Stokely as Kwame Ture, came on down to finish the march. But guess who came on up to meet Dr. King? The Deacons for Defense from Bogalusa, Louisiana. That's the Deacons for Defense, who kind of like the forerunners of the Black Panther Party. He was former military veterans, black military veterans who believe in self-defense. So when Dr. King got the call, he wanted to finish the March Against Fear, they came on up and protected him. You know, I talked to elders who was a part of that March Against Fear. They said it was like a parade of the absurd. You had, Dr. King walking down with the SCLC, Stokely and Snake, and some other black folk. And you had the Deacons for Defense with guns walking around Dr. King. Then you had the Klan behind Dr. King. You had the FBI behind the Klan. It was like everybody was walking down, and then the highway patrol lining up. So it was like a weird atmosphere. So yeah, Dr. King believed in protecting. Even when he was in Montgomery, he had folks around him who had guns. He tried to get a gun permit, I believe in Alabama, was turned down. But, nonviolence is interesting. People talking about nonviolence, when this system deals in the language of violence. Even Dr. King realized that the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet is my own government. He realized that towards the end. So, you think about nonviolence, that's a tactic, that's a strategy, that's not a way of life, because self-preservation is the number one law of nature. Now, how many of y'all gonna be nonviolent? You see somebody raping your daughter or raping your mama or your grandma or mistreating your family. You're just gonna say, I'm gonna be nonviolent. Even towards the end, Dr. King was seeing the light. Cause he said that the system, the environment was making it really uneasy for us to be nonviolent. And he was seeing how the black radicals were right. He started, one of his good friends was Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. He valued, the input and advice of Kwame Ture. He wanted Kwame to hear his, speeches when he did them at church on Sunday. Dr. King was dangerous, like Malcolm X, because he could make it plain. He didn't believe in using them big college words. He could break down the geopolitical history of Vietnam in the 20th century in one Sunday sermon to a person with a limited educational background in his congregation could get it. That's a dangerous person. You eliminate people that can make it plain to everyday people. Like all the folks some of y'all revere, I ain't gonna say their names, some of these so-called black public intellectuals, the reason why they still around because they're ineffective. They're not reaching certain people. But Dr. King and Malcolm X reached certain elements, in our community. They were planting seeds. Dr. King came out against the Vietnam War April 4th, 1967 at Riverside Church up in New York City. He was dead April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, fighting for the rights of black sanitation workers, black garbage workers. Once again, let me repeat. Dr. King officially came out against the Vietnam War April 4th, 1967. He was dead in Memphis, Tennessee, April 4th, 1968. That's a message, y'all. I know y'all afraid. Y'all say it was just coincidence. Ain't no coincidence when the whole system is based on conspiracy. You could never have a coincidence when the whole system is based on conspiracy. You can never have a coincidence when the whole system is based on conspiracy. So these are important things to note. And you can look all this stuff online. Cause I know we have a hard time trusting each other as black people, as well as trusting a black man. And it just really bothers me. You got people out there that believe knowledge is free. No, you pay a price for everything you want to know, my dear. Anything worth having, you pay a price. There's a hidden tax on everything. I'm just tired of intellectually lazy people think it's right You say, oh, no, knowledge is free. You ain't doing nothing with it. Being real selfish. You know, not sharing anything, not building anything. We don't need no sprinters right now. We need marathon runners. We don't need no complainers right now. We need builders. A lot of y'all just take, y'all don't give. You know, I'm giving this, you know, use your talents. This is the year of the risk taker. You know, build your tribes up. Because right now we in a Trump geist. And y'all think y'all reinventing the wheel. Y'all got to know this history. Because we're making the same mistakes that they made 50, 60 years ago. But also study the victories. Study what made the Montgomery bus boycott so successful. Study those things. Just don't keep on marching in the streets and protesting and giving out this energy. Be pro something instead of anti something. Instead of being anti-war, be pro-peace. Instead of being anti anybody else, be pro you. Invest in you. You can never go wrong in investing in you. So I think I told y'all enough things about Dr. King for now that you need to know. But also, I remember my sister recently asked me about Dr. King at the hotel. I was visiting Dick Gregory at Worker. She was talking about, did Dr. King have any like girls on the side and all this stuff? What you think? He's a black minister? I don't know. Dr. King had his flaws. He was a man. You know, and power is a powerful aphrodisiac. For men and women, when you are perceived as being a very powerful and influential person, that's attracted to both men and women. Why is that important if he had relationships outside of his marriage? It's some things that have been documented, you know. But back then, you had respectable hoes. You know, you didn't have no social media back then. They didn't want to go late. The thoughts knew their place. The thoughts back then knew their place, okay? The thoughts knew their place. I don't know if it was today, you know, he'd probably be labeled as a charlatan, as a faker. I don't know. It's not important. I just look at the work. The man was under stress for 13 years of his life. He loved his people enough to sacrifice his family. He took a vow of poverty. When Dr. King died, he was very poor. I mean, by choice. He didn't have to be poor, but he gave his life, his money to the movement. When he won the Nobel Peace Prize, he was awarded $54,600 around that amount. But he gave all that money back to the movement. He had to be forced to move his family into a new home. I mean, he liked nice suits and stuff like that, but he didn't really care for material wealth. He wanted real justice. He was fighting for justice for his people. And when he died, he had no will. He was 39 years old. He had a family, but had no will. He was mostly away from home. He didn't spend a lot of time with his family because of his dedication to the movement. But think about this. They got this big $100 million whatever statue down in D.C. The MLK Memorial, honor Dr. King, the first black person to be honored that way in a place where they honor presidents. But he spent most of his adult life trying to raise money for the cause. He was always struggling, never had enough money for the movement. But yet, the same folks that he criticized and fought against and things, these powers that be, after they killed them, you know, they gave all the money in the world to build this monument. Dr. King would probably rather had that money for the movement. But that's me. It is funny. It's the irony of it all. This guy who spent most of his adult life trying to raise money, never could raise enough money for the cause, ended up getting all this money in for a statue in his honor, you know, which is interesting. Harry Belafonte, you know, unsung hero, very close to Dr. King. This is the man that Dr. King told, hey, I think we're integrating into a burning house. I think we're losing our way. But, you know, along with Coretta, he helped, you know, prepare Dr. King for his funeral. He helped Coretta pick out the suit for Dr. King. He helped raise money for Dr. King's movement as well as for Dr. King's family after he passed away. He made sure there was enough money on him and along with some other unsung people for the King family to live a comfortable existence as well as to go to college, to get higher education. And people complain about the way the King family fight over their dad's legacy in terms of dollars. Have you ever been through what they've been through? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they're going to be a little bit fucked up, okay? Look what they've been through. Look what their family had to endure for generations. So, I mean, it's not for me to judge these people because everything when it's about family and money is going to be fucked up. That's with anybody family. But the only thing difference between a lot of them and the King family is that the King family problems get broadcast through the media because they're a prominent family, like the Kennedys or anybody else. Okay, so really it was the genius of Coretta. Dr. King was a Capricorn, born January the 15th, 29. Coretta was a Taurus, born April 27th, 1927. Capricorn, Tauruses, power couples, right? Capricorn, very visionary, all this stuff. But Tauruses know how to get shit done. They know how to build institutions, get shit done. They know how to make their dreams real. I'm a Taurus. So anyway, April 23rd. But Coretta, as soon as Dr. King was assassinated, she started working on securing his legacy. She was a visionary. It was people that were so-called close to Dr. King, people including Jesse Jackson, told Coretta, you need to leave it alone. Coretta, leave it alone. Just keep it moving. Don't worry about doing anything for Martin. She was the person that came up with the idea of the King Center. She was the person that came up with the idea to push Dr. King's birthday as a holiday. Like Baba Dick Gregory said, once you know the power of what a black woman is, or who she is, once you know who that black woman is, the power of a black woman to resurrect her man's memory, to make his dreams real. That was her. And it was also her, trying to get control of Dr. King's intellectual property. She was one that took places to court to get control. So that's why the kids today have millions of dollars in the bank. That's why they have anything, because their mom made sure that she took care of business. That was Coretta Scott King, a true unsung sister who fed her man spiritually and mentally, all this stuff. She believed in her man's mission and she continued the torch. So that's something y'all need to know. The reason why the King family have anything is because what their mama was able to secure for them. She set it up like that. She set up the estate properly. Look at Malcolm X's family. I mean, Malcolm X, all this intellectual property is flowing and people just taking advantage of it. And their family have suffered so much, like the King family, for generations. They deserve to have somebody help them control their intellectual property. But that's another story. That's another story, but it's the same old song. Black folks, we sacrifice so much because we don't understand the value of who we are really. People like, I'm Ron Hurd. I got to die one day. I create art. I create videos. I interview people. It's intellectual property. This is generational wealth. White supremacy will fight you to take control of your intellectual property from your family. It's warfare with white supremacy. Every area of human activity is warfare. Okay? Realize that, we are the descendants of Dred Scott. What that U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice Roger Taney told Dred Scott so many words. You or your descendants have no rights that the white man is bound to respect. I mean, we could take all your shit. Y'all have no property rights. Y'all have no civil rights. Y'all have no human rights. Y'all not even human. And black folks still think about, no, we citizens, no, you American because you was here. Dr. King knew that we the aboriginals. Malcolm X knew. Sun Ra. All these black folks is for black people. That black folks kind of like, they kind of scary because they for us, me whenever we anti-white. Because you for black folks, you must be anti-white. That's not even true. You gotta be pro-self instead of being anti-anybody else. That's more powerful. But black folks is everywhere. We already been here. We the original people. And this is not no black supremacist talk. This is based on fact. But that's another story. But my problem is we need an alternative black media that control this narrative to get it out to our people. And that's what I do in my own way. But we all need to be doing that. We give away too much power. It's time for us to reclaim our power, especially to reclaim the power of the narrative, to feed our children, to feed ourselves, to feed our people. We need this right now. Black folks need this right now. Okay, by any means necessary. Whatever that means to you, embrace it. Stop apologizing. Stop trying to get white folks approval for everything. We created the table and the food. They came. They were rude. They were misbehaving. Had bad table manners. And this is why we at where we at now. Okay? So what else can I say right now about Dr. King? Oh yeah, Dr. King, like I said, he had issues with ministers. He called over 100 ministers to meet with him in Virginia to plan his Poor People campaign back in 1967. Over 100 ministers were called to meet with him. They're playing this Poor People campaign back in 1967. Guess how many ministers show up? 0. Dr. King was depressed a lot. He used to stay up a lot. He used to chain smoke. He had a little taste for liquor, I guess. But he'd be so exhausted. He used to stay up for days and days. He'd check himself to the hospital. Dr. King was a nervous mess. That's why I said, you got to love this man because, look at what he sacrificed in order to help his people. He didn't have to do that. He could have lived a comfortable existence. He came from an upper middle class black background, like a Huxtable background. He didn't need to take this on. He did not need to take this on. He could have lived comfortable into old age if he had stopped after 1956 doing this movement stuff. Okay, so anyway, I guess, is that it? Is that all to say about King right now? I guess that we do right now about Dr. King. But I said a lot, and you can research everything I say and spread the word. Like I said, his real name is Michael King Jr. It was never changed legally. His real name is Michael. Like Kirk Douglas, all them changed their name, But yeah, I guess Dr. King, so much. It is so much. But you see the thing though, right? Like I said, he wanted to marry a German woman, a white cafeteria worker, before he ended up with Coretta. You see, like a lot of movement guys were married to white women. James Foreman, Malcolm X, before he was Malcolm X with Detroit Red, he dealt with white women. A lot of people joke, hey, the civil rights movement was made available so that the black man could sleep with the white woman and get with her legally. Think about Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte. Their last wives were white. So that is a joke. Marcus Garvey had a white girl as a playmate when he was growing up. And we know people that know about the Marcus Garvey story know about this story. What ended up happening with that. So same thing with Martin. He had, I think, white playmates to a point, and then once they came of a certain age, once they approached their teenage years, the white parents pulled the white kids away from the black kids. And we know how they all go. So anyway, if you like what you heard, please feel free to spread the word from Mr. Heard. Subscribe to the channel, support the channel, come to the source. Support us so we can support you out. Feed us so we can feed you out. You know what I'm saying? Don't be like ripping us off and all this stuff, because this is important work. And because a lot of times people take stuff, they don't know how to replicate it, they don't know how to produce it, they don't know how to add on to it. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing all this stuff out because the ancestors, they called for justice. They wanted to be known, what's going on, because the ancestors never left us. Like people always looking, where's the next Malcolm, Martin, Huey, and all that stuff. We are the next Malcolms. We are the next Martins. We are the next Hueys. We are the ancestors. We always come back. We don't die. We multiply. Okay. So get with the program. Stop being afraid. Don't be scared. Be prepared. Don't be afraid. Be fierce. 2017, year of the risk taker. 2017, year of the risk taker. 2017, year of the risk taker. Take advantage. One love, family. In the words of Great Duke Ellington, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing. Another thing, family, that they don't really talk about as related to Dr. King is about him being a pool shark. He was a great pool player. That was one of the tools he used to recruit people to his cause. For example, he go into the black neighborhoods. Although he came from a upper black middle class background, he knew how to connect with people. Dr. King was a very sociable person, but he would use pool as a way to get people attention and to also, relay his message. So he was an avid pool player, a real pool shark, very good at pool. And another thing people don't realize, that when he passed away, when he was on that balcony, laying out on the balcony floor, you had this black man that was kneeling over him while everybody else in that photograph were pointing somewhere. You had this black man that was kneeling over Dr. King. His name is Morrell McCullough. Morrell McCullough was a military intelligence undercover police officer. He was embedded with the Memphis Invader Group, the Memphis version of the Black Panther Party, who were kicked out the hotel just moments before Dr. King was assassinated, who were armed and who was working with Dr. King in order to have a peaceful march to make up for what happened on March 28th, 1968, the Thursday before the following Thursday when Dr. King was assassinated. There's a point to note. Morrell McCullough ended up becoming the first black commissioned CIA officer in history. I actually had a chance to cold call Morrell McCullough. I found his phone number in the white pages. Take a look. It's all online. And I talked to him about less than 2 minutes. It was very fascinating. But he did confirm he was the Morrell McCullough that was in Memphis the day that Dr. King got killed. And also what happened on March 28th in the aftermath of their failed March campaign. You had a 16-year-old black kid from the projects, Larry Payne, who was killed by the police. You had witnesses that said he was killed in cold blood. The police tried to act like he had a knife or something on his person, but all he did was go to the grocery store to get some snacks, to get a soda pop, whatever you want to call it, and the police killed him in cold blood and basically traumatized his mama and his family, because when the mama came on the scene, they basically said, "Nigga, don't you touch that boy, we'll kill your ass, nigga." Stuff like that. Very disrespectful stuff. The family ended up getting harassed by the white power structure in Memphis, so they had to flee to Flint, Michigan. But I interviewed them about 5 or 6 years ago on our YouTube channel about Larry Payne, what happened. So you talking about Mike Brown, you talking about Trayvon Martin, you talking about Jordan Davis, the same old shit every generation, every generation. So this is something I want to get out there to the people. And this is why it's so important that you pay attention to what's going on in We All Be, because we are news-free Dixie for the 21st century. One love.